news next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, updating our Wheaton College story. I mentioned our program director, Marcus Brown, attended there. Come to find out, some unfortunate news. He, during his time there, ran a campaign against Russ Vought when Russ Vought ran for student body president. So, as a, I have reporting responsibilities to the MAGA League office, so we're going to have to...
Where we'd sending him, what camp?
Well, we're going to have to disclose him. I mean, that's going to be up to the MAGA Gruppenführers to decide what camp he goes to. I hope, Amy, you'll put in a good word for him. I know you have standing with the MAGA folks.
Yeah. We'll send him to a nice one. All-inclusive camp.
You know, you can. We're going to suggest that if you're a Wheaton College grad, you're not allowed to pray for Russ Vought. That's clear. Or congratulate him.
No, don't.
But
act like he doesn't exist, you know?
But we will request that whether you're a Wheaton College grad or not, you do pray for our program director, Marcus Brown, now that he seems to have fallen out of favor. Okay. All right. Well, you know, we have to... It has to be a reckoning, you know, and so forth. Okay. It turns out, I don't know, did you ever watch any of the installments of Narcos, Amy?
I did not. I know that's not going to surprise you, but I didn't.
Yeah, great show. It turns out, I mean, there's a lot of historical accuracy in those programs, including the kidnapping and murder of DEA agent Kiki Camarena, which really changed the relationship between America and Mexico in the 1980s. But, you know, all this back and forth after Trump termed Mexico a narco state, suggesting that this was some sort of shocking affront to the Mexican government or to the Mexican people. The conduct of the Mexican cartels, their, to some extent, understandable fear of elected officials in Mexico because of the assassinations the cartels carry out against politicians who dare to cross them. But the idea that there is not a relationship between the drug cartels and the Mexican government, which the newly minted president Sheinbaum suggested, is laughable, and everyone knows it. But I understand when Trump is in the White House, all sorts of people want to pretend to know things, not to know things that they do know that are obvious for anybody paying attention. For more on the topic and its impact on border security, which is part of the overriding concern for us, pleased to be joined by an old friend of mine, Joshua Treviño, who is the Chief Transformation Officer, not Chief Trans Officer. Chief Transformation Officer. Okay. Big difference. At the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Josh, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you again, Dan.
Good to have you. And so you penned this piece about the Mexican state-cartel alliance. I mean, why don't you provide, I know Hollywood sensationalizes these things, but why don't you provide us the nuts and bolts of the relationship between the cartels and the government, regardless of who the president is?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's my pleasure to do it. You know, it's funny, Hollywood couldn't make up something as dramatic and preposterous as what's actually happening in Mexico right now. The bottom line is this: the Trump administration is 1,000% correct that there is an alliance, and there has been for years, between the cartels and the government of Mexico. If you work in Mexico, as I do, as several of my colleagues do, then you know that it's out in the open there. Now, the Mexican state professes horror and shock and indignation when American governments call themselves out on it. The Biden regime, of course, never did for reasons of their own. But the reality is this: the current ruling party in Mexico has almost certainly had a financial and political alliance with the Sinaloa cartel in particular for most of the past 20 years. There's a ton of evidence to that end. People who have investigated it have been attacked by that government in ways fatal and non-fatal. And so it's something that we have to congratulate this new White House for stating plainly. And American policy is going to have to adjust itself to the fact that we don't have a partner in the government of Mexico at this point.
What is, there was talk during the presidential campaign, you'll remember, Ron DeSantis even suggesting sending special forces across the border into Mexico to eradicate the cartels. I mean, and I think, Trump has made sort of noise in that direction before as well. I mean, what can we do beyond working as constructively as possible with the Mexican government in its current formation to get things like what Trump got with the tariff threat, which is to send 10,000 military police to the border to enhance enforcement on their side of the Mexican-American border? What other things should we be thinking about that are feasible?
Great question. The Mexican argument, of course, is that they, despite their alliance with the cartels, are nonetheless indispensable partners to us in Mexico. And the first thing we have to do is mentally abandon that framework. We need to understand and act upon the realization that we have to do what's best for ourselves here in the United States. And that first and foremost means linking trade and security. Mexico depends upon the United States for its prosperity and trade, and we, of course, have some reliance upon them, but it is not nearly to the extent that they rely upon us. They ought not get rich off of us, and they ought not enjoy the benefits of trade and commerce with us so long as they fail to deliver security. And so that needs to be premise number one of our relationship with them. And I think the Trump White House has moved a long way in that direction with the tariff threats. We'll see how far they're willing to go on it. The other thing that we need to make really clear is that we're willing to act unilaterally. If there is a cartel threat, I totally agree with Secdef Hegseth that armed force ought to be on the table. It's something that the Mexicans are desperate to prevent, but that needs to be a tool in the kit, and we need to be credibly willing to use it. And I think that constitutes a good start.
Well, what about, I see online people saying, don't send your kids, to Mexico for spring break because that's right around the corner. Is it safe for them to go right now?
Boy, that is a great question. You have to exercise a lot of caution in Mexico. Now, I do go to Mexico City in particular, fairly often for work. There's a lot of great things about Mexico. I am ethnically Mexican from South Texas, so I have a lot of affinity for the culture and the values that prevail down there. The government is terrible. I would encourage anyone who goes to exercise tremendous caution. Don't be complacent. Mexico is fine until it isn't for the individual American, and unfortunately, the trajectory that Mexico is on is toward the worse.
So the 10,000 military police they scramble to the border, is that just a Potemkin offering, or is that something where they're actually going to enhance security there?
The most malignant and powerful trafficking organization in Mexico is the Mexican Army, period, full stop. And I think you can derive conclusions about the quality of the 10,000 personnel from that fact. So
then if that's true, then the larger question, I suppose, if the president of Mexico wanted to, does she have the resources to go after the cartels? I mean, Calderon attempted to go after the cartels, if I'm remembering correctly. Didn't stick, of course. But is it a capacity issue? Is it a political will issue? Is it some combination of the two?
Yeah, it's all of the above. And your memory is entirely accurate. Felipe Calderon did try to go after the cartels and failed. In fact, the situation significantly worsened under his watch, not least because he had a series of corrupt officials working for him. Now, the qualitative difference with the current president of Mexico is that she's in a bind. She's not really in control of her party. Her predecessor is, and he's the one who forged the link with the Sinaloa cartels. And the choice that she needs to be forced to make eventually is to decide between the United States and that predecessor. Is she going to honor and extend her party's alliance with the Sinaloans, or is she going to forge a partnership with the United States? So right now, she's opted for the wrong choice, in our view. And so we need to bring pressure to bear until it is intolerable for her to continue to protect the corrupt elements in her own party and society.
I mean, just the prospect of some sort of military intervention, I mean, first of all, sort of goes against the disposition of the administration against foreign entanglements, but there are going to be exceptions to that. I mean, Trump has essentially proposed one in terms of the rebuilding of Gaza. So there's open-mindedness, I think, to exceptions that make sense. But I mean, what form would that take if you really, as the President of the United States, wanted to go after the Sinaloa cartel specifically to send a message to the rest of the cartels?
Yeah, no, good observation. A successful policy involves no Americans on the ground in Mexico. I want to be 100% clear on that, which is why we've consistently advocated for maximum pressure on the Mexican regime itself. We should have no trust in that regime. It's a bad faith partner, but even bad faith partners can be brought to do the right thing, and that's why we need to apply the credible threat of military force, the real threat of economic pressure brought to bear to force that regime to do what it must. Remember, they value their lifestyles and money more than they value the welfare of their own people. It's sad, but it's absolutely true. And so when you talk about Mexican elites who hold the destiny of their country in their own hands, their access to U.S. money, U.S. education, U.S. health care, if you put all that on the table, which it's currently not, they're probably going to come around. Now, if it arises that there is a need for U.S. military intervention, then it's got to be small and targeted, is my guess. I'm not going to read the minds of anybody in national leadership right now on that. But I concur with you. I don't think there's an appetite for anything large and enduring. But one thing that Trump's been good at is he has been uncompromising on American self-defense, and this is a clear-cut case of that.
Well, I mean, the attitude of Mexican elites putting their material interests ahead of the welfare of their people, that's indistinguishable from American elites. So we understand that mentality perfectly.
Indeed, we do.
Just since you're down there and you're back and forth, how would you describe the change that has occurred at the border with the change in administrations here?
Well, obviously the illegal crossings have dropped precipitously, which demonstrates one big thing, that they always could have. What we endured under the Biden regime was a positive choice made, both by Mexico City and by Washington, D.C., and we shouldn't forget that. All illegal crossing is controlled by human trafficking cartels, which is the same as the drug cartels, and they and their allies in the Mexican government and their de facto allies in the Biden regime, let's be candid about it, could have stopped this at any time. They didn't. The fact that it has dropped to negligible numbers under Trump only shows that what we've had to live through was the result of a decision made by somebody, and we need to find those people.
Joshua Treviño, Chief Transformation Officer at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Josh, thanks. Great to talk to you again.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, I'm Ken Mariotti, owner of Woodland Windows and Doors, a third-generation family-owned business since 1969. We know you're bombarded by choices